Hey guys, what's up? Nick here once again, and today we're going to be unboxing and taking a first look impression at the brand new Valve Steam Deck OLED. So let's get right into it. This is the 512GB model, the mid-tier model according to Valve. They do have a 1TB model now with the anti-glare display. I do have the old top-of-the-line Steam Deck here, which was the original anti-glare etched display, and this also is a 512GB model. Yes, I will be doing a separate video where we go head-to-head and more in-depth with the old LCD Steam Deck and the new OLED, so be tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. So let's get right into the unboxing here. I am really excited to see how it looks with the new glossy display versus my old anti-glare display, again on the LCD Steam Deck, because the reason I went with this one is just because I've heard some rumors that the anti-glare display on the OLED apparently lowers some of the actual viewing angles, and it just doesn't look as good in the coloration versus the standard edition essentially. So that's why I went with the standard edition. Also, I'm saving $100, so might as well. Got the tape cut here. Flip it open and see what's inside. And this looks a lot like the original Steam Deck packaging. We got the included carrying case and the accessories. So let's get the accessories out of the way first. All right, so we do have a box here. Throw some cardboard away. It says Valve on it. And I'm assuming this is just going to be the included charger. Yes, it looks to be. And let's see, is it 65 watts just like the original? I actually don't see 65 watts written anywhere on here, but I'm just going to assume this is the same 65 watt charger that we got with the original Steam Deck. We do have a nice little logo on the side there. Looks really cool. It's on both sides as well. And it is nice that it is included USB-C, as we've come to know and love. And then probably just some little instructions in the bottom there, but we don't need to get into that. Okay, and putting the box to the side, we got the main product here in its carrying case. And I will be putting the carrying cases next to each other with the original and the OLED. And again, the original LCD model, the 512GB model, did have a different carrying case than if you went with the mid-tier. So I am kind of curious if they did the same thing this time around, if the mid-tier and the low-tier Steam Decks got the lesser version of the carrying case than if you went with the 1TB model. I'm not sure. I wish I had both here to test, but I had to purchase this with my own money. This was not sent to me through Valve. So just so you guys are aware, this is all my honest opinions after purchasing it myself. All right, your game's in a whole new light. I believe this is almost the same as the original. It was a different logo though, or a different saying, but I do like the new Steam Deck OLED with the red button there to insinuate the new power button. Nothing really too crazy on there, so let's rip this off. Aw, man, that's depression. Ah, this is not clean. Wow, okay, let's try to go from this side. It is not perforated as well. All right, well, we're just gonna have to cut it with my scissors. All right, get that off of there. And we do have one difference. It now has the little red dot for the actual logo instead of just a white dot. If we put it up against the original LCD model, again, this was the top of the line model, 512GB, and this one came with the blue indentation. I am more of the blue, I will say. I don't, it's just a color preference, but the red and white does look good. Doesn't look bad. It's actually kind of more orange. Maybe it depends on the lighting, but maybe in my lighting it's more orange than it is red. We also, on the side here, it looks like we have a little Valve tag, which is pretty cool. Ooh, some really nice grips here. Some white plastic grips for the zippers. We have a handle as well. Nothing else around it or on the back. We do have the strap like we did before, so you can stuff the charger in there if needed or some other accessories, but it's not super stable, so they could slip out, so just keep that in mind. And everything was pretty much the same on the old one as well. We still had the white rubber tips, or the plastic. They are plastic. They feel kind of rubbery, but they are plastic. We got the handle, and we have that opening for the charging. All right, let's cut this off and get her open. Here we go. And I have a feeling it's gonna be backwards, so we're gonna flip it this way. There she is, the OLED Steam Deck in all her glory. Okay, let's lift her out here. See if she feels any lighter than the original. So far, feels about the same, like in first glance. Let me pick up the old one here. Okay. It's pretty close. People have been really ranting and raving about they shaved off a lot of the fat, but honestly, it's pretty close. It's not a super big difference. It is lighter. I can tell a difference. Yeah, I can tell a difference. It is lighter, but I think if you were to blindfold me and hand one in my hand, I couldn't be able to tell you which one is which. It's that close. But I will say I do like the all black aesthetic, especially with the analogs. You can see now the analog is black on the inside instead of the gray on the original. So that's kind of cool. Everything else feels about the same. We have an orange power button, so I guess they are going for orange and black. I'm just colorblind. I thought it was red. So yeah, orange and black. LED, USB-C, everything else is the same. No changes really too much to the outside other than just the black color scheme, which I do like. I like that change. Ooh, oh, they fixed the buttons. Oh my god, I didn't even know that was a feature. They fixed the Steam buttons. So on the original, there's no way I can get this on camera, but just trust me, if you have an original LCD Steam Deck, you know what I'm talking about. These buttons, the Steam buttons, are so mushy. They just have almost no tactile feedback. They really stick out as poorly designed compared to the rest of the machine. But it's got some tactile resistance now, tactile feedback. That feels great. That's so much better. It's not perfect. It definitely could be better. I like these buttons a lot more, but they're still much better than the original. We'll have to see if the speakers are the same. I've heard the trackpads have been updated. Analogs feel about the same. Obviously, this one has some more use to it, so the analogs feel a little looser. That's just going to happen though over time, but I still like the analogs on the original LCD, so no issues there. Buttons feel the same. Triggers feel the same. Back buttons feel just as tough to press in. I know some people, including myself, that was a complaint of the original design, is they wish these were a little easier to press in. Sadly, no fix there. Another thing I was kind of bummed about with the OLED when it got announced, they still have not included a built-in kickstand. Really big bummer there, Valve. Another thing too is I really don't like how low these vents are in the back. It's the same with the original too. They didn't change that. But I really wish this would have been risen, like put it up here somewhere. The main reason for this, and this is probably, it might just be a me issue. I don't know if anybody else can relate. But here's the Legion Go, just as an example here. So on the back, we not only have a built-in kickstand, which is awesome, but the vents for intake to cool the system are at the top. The reason this is a huge benefit is because if you're like laying down in bed, I don't know about you guys, but my arms get really tired holding these devices for long periods of time. So what I do to circumvent that, I put a pillow underneath the device, whether it's on my knees or on my chest or whatever, whatever position I'm laying in. I put a pillow under this. With this device, I don't have any issues with that. It works great. I love the kickstand, and I like that the vents are high enough because when the vents are low, like they are on the Steam Deck, the problem with that is that a pillow or a blanket or whatever can cover this up super easily and thus overheat your device. It's happened to my original one a few times, and it is noticeable. Not a deal breaker, and I probably sound like I'm nitpicking, but it is honestly a problem, and I hope that with the Steam Deck 2, they do fix that, and they do move it up a little higher and give us a built-in kickstand. The built-in kickstand isn't, it's not like a much-needed feature with the Steam Deck because the controllers aren't removable like they are in the Legion Go. It makes more sense why the Legion Go would have it, but after having it on a device, it's kind of going to be hard to go back without having it. And then we do have the SD card reader on the bottom here. Again, kind of a weak placement. I do wish it was on the top and not the bottom. It is what it is. And last but not least, I wish they would have added another USB-C port. I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to charge this device while also using a mouse and keyboard without having to plug in some type of docking station. It's just kind of a bummer they haven't implemented that, especially with this new evolution. But I can let all that slide because the obvious benefit to this device is it feels lighter in the hand. It's got a much brighter, better, clearer display. It is a little bigger too. This is 7.4 inch versus the 7 inch on the original. So we'll boot this up while I'm talking about it, see if it's got any juice in it. Looks like it does. Let that boot up. I'm going to boot up my original Steam Deck as well. We can see the boot up animation here. It's now orange to simulate the new OLED, which is pretty cool. All right, she's alive. I'll get this all set up off camera, and we'll come back obviously later in the video with my first impressions of gaming and stuff like that on the OLED and give you a little bit of a comparison. But again, this is not going to be a full comparison with the old LCD version. You'll have to wait for that one. Right off the bat, though, I'm already seeing a big difference in clarity with text. That's going to be a big bump. If you had any issues with the previous model with the text on the display, because this is an 800p display, it's not 1080p, it's not higher than that, it's 800p, which is basically 720. So the nice thing about the OLED is it can kind of bump up those textures to make them a little crisper, a little cleaner, even on a 720p display, especially even raising the size of that display. So the bezels are smaller, both on the sides and up above. You see they're much shorter here. There is a black bar, obviously, through the software right now, but when we're actually in the software and looking at a game, those will fill up, and it's going to just look a lot nicer in general. We did boot up the original. You can see here the bezels. Let's go to the bottom here if we can kind of get a good look at that. The bezel's a lot smaller on the OLED top there. Look at side by side on the sides here. Look at how much is trimmed off on the sides. That is huge. It's only 0.4 inches bigger, but it looks, in person, it looks like a lot larger of a display, which is awesome to see. And they didn't have to sacrifice making the device itself larger. They just made the bezels smaller. So good on you, Valve, for doing that. That's awesome. So yeah, let's get this thing booted up, logged into my Steam account. I'm going to install some games, and we'll come back and we'll do a little bit of a comparison and give you my first initial thoughts on the system and its performance after getting it booted up and ready to go. Okay, and we are back. I got both devices set up here, and I got a couple games installed on both of them just to give them a fair, even match between each other to show you the differences in the quality and whatnot. On the bottom here is the original LCD model for the Steam Deck. Again, this one does have the anti-glare setting, and then up top here is the mid-tier non-anti-glare screen for the OLED Steam Deck. You can see them side by side now. When you're looking at it in person, it might not pick up too much on camera. And by the way, these are at the same brightness levels for the displays. We'll go a little bit brighter down here just to make it more fair. Maybe about there. That looks about good. So same brightness levels on both displays, and both of the color settings are set to boosted. Now, the difference with the OLED version is the settings are not boosted and sRGB. It's sRGB and neutral, which is kind of weird. And then this one goes to boosted. So I set this one to boosted and this one to neutral. They relatively look the same in terms of the color output, but you can see clear as day the OLED is a much just brighter, more vivid display. The colors seem to pop a lot more, and the darks are just so dark, they look gorgeous. The text also seems to be a little bit more clearer on the OLED compared to the LCD. Again, none of this might be picked up on the camera. It's really hard to show a difference of OLED displays with a video camera, but trust me, in person, there is a drastic difference. You also have a little bit more of like a haze over the colors on the original LCD versus the OLED. Just looks clearer overall. I have both devices right now connected to Bluetooth controllers, so I can use these without having to touch and mess around with the actual devices. So if you see me moving through the menus, it's not a pre-recorded display. It's literally just me using a wireless controller. So for the first test here, we're going to jump into Wreckfest. I did not boot these games up prior. These are straight up first downloaded to the system, first time booting up, and we're going to see how they go. Both of these games are verified to work for the Steam Deck, so we shouldn't have any issues. And just for a reference, I have played Wreckfest a few times already on my original Steam Deck, but I uninstalled it for this video and reinstalled it. So without further ado, here we go. Starting from scratch, both can hit X at the exact same time. And we're to see if any of them boot up quicker than the other. Again, OLED on top, LCD is on the bottom. Oh, well, I didn't realize I was going to run into that, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of editing trickery to show you the differences between the two side by side. I promise I'm not going to cheat this, but for right now, we're just going to look at the OLED, and then we'll come back to the original Steam Deck. Alrighty, so going into the game on the OLED here, we do have the game running here at 800p, full screen, no VSync. Looks like everything is set to high, and we're going to see what we get for performance here. So right now we're getting roughly around 70 FPS average, not too bad. It is dipping down below 60, however. And this is all with default settings on the OLED, by the way. I'm not using anything different within the Steam settings. And this is at 90 Hertz. That was another thing I forgot to mention. This is a 90 Hertz display. The original is a 60 Hertz, so that is a pretty big bump up in terms of smoothness. And you really do notice it when going through the menus, and even in gameplay here, like it looks so smooth, even if it does dip down to 60 to 50 FPS at certain points. But overall, it feels very smooth. I wish I could pick this up on my camera, though. When it comes to anything above 60 Hertz, a video camera is not going to pick that up very well. It's, again, going to be something you're going to have to see in person. But this OLED display is absolutely gorgeous. Out of curiosity, if we were to lower it down to, let's say, 40 FPS, so we leave everything else default and we just lower it to 40 FPS. As you can see, it does double it to 80 Hertz, which is still 20 Hertz higher than the 60 Hertz on this guy. Let's see what that looks like at 40. Well, that still looks really buttery smooth. And this is probably the way you're going to play most of your games on the Steam Deck, at least in my opinion. Yes, 40 FPS may sound kind of weird, especially if you're used to playing 60 FPS games. But in person, 40 FPS, especially when it's ramped up to 80 Hertz, you are not going to notice any difference going to 60 FPS, other than just you're going to have some dips here and there in performance where you will not get that, at least for most games, if you lower it to 40 FPS. Racing games and stuff like that are going to benefit very largely from doing this, and I love that Valve was able to implement that 80 Hertz refresh rate with the 40 FPS cap. So yeah, Wreckfest is running flawlessly on the OLED, no issues here. You guys can see for yourself all the different stats at the top of the display. I don't have to read those out to you. And if you want more of an analytical take on the performance of these devices versus each other, I'll get more into that in my full versus, my full head-to-head video of the original Steam Deck and the OLED. And there's also other amazing videos out there right now you can go check out from like Gamers Nexus and stuff like that if you want way more details into that stuff. This is more of just out-of-the-box experience, what you should expect with picking up an OLED Steam Deck, and if it's worth an upgrade from the original LCD model. All right, really quick, just for comparison, let's jump into the same game on the original LCD model. Just for comparison's sake, we're running it at the same 800 resolution, full screen. We're going to make sure VSync is disabled just like it was on the other device. Graphics are also set to high. As I said before, we're going to do the same track with the same car, again, just to test the best with the differences in performance. And we, once again, are running everything at default settings. This is the highest hertz we can go is 60 Hertz, 60 FPS. Nothing has changed, and we're going to see what we get for performance. On the OLED, we were hitting around 72 FPS at a max, and it was dipping down to about 52 FPS from time to time, depending on how much was going on the display. So we'll keep an eye on the FPS here and see if we get relatively the same performance, maybe a little bit worse, or maybe even better, who knows. So right now, we're hovering around 60. And the thing is, I believe this is going to put a cap at 60 FPS. There's no way to go above that. And I do have VSync turned off. And even though the game seems to be running pretty smoothly at the moment, I can already tell a big difference in the smoothness in general of the display going from a 90 Hertz display to a 60 Hertz. It's just night and day in person. Now on camera, it might look the exact same. You might be like, what are you talking about? But trust me, in person, it is a much different experience. Is this a bad experience? No, not at all. This is still very smooth. It looks very good, even on a handheld device. This game is gorgeous. But yeah, compared to the actual OLED 90 Hertz display on the new Steam Deck, it is no question. We even dipped down to 49 there for a second, so we are dipping. But for the most part, I'd say on average, we're getting around 55 to 60 FPS, which is pretty good. What we're going to do here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to limit this down to 40 Hertz, 40 FPS. So With the original Steam Deck, it will not boost it to 80 hertz. It'll keep it at 40 hertz, 40 FPS. So this will look a lot different compared to on the OLED, even though they're going to be capped at the same frames. And I've always said this since day one with the original Steam Deck. I have a lot of videos on this channel saying the exact same thing, and I still stand by it. In my personal opinion, I still don't see much of a difference going from 40 FPS to 60 FPS on a Steam Deck. They're neck and neck. Now, there might be certain games where you might notice a big difference here, but for me personally, I literally see no difference. I know some people, depending on their eyes, this is going to sound really weird, but I've gotten comments from multiple people saying this, so I know it must be true. There are certain people that do notice flickering or some type of strobe effect with their vision when it comes to 40 hertz displays. So that you might be one of those people, and this might not work for you. But for me, no issues and really no difference going from 40 hertz to 60 hertz. So personally, I would just lower it to 40 hertz, not only to save on battery life, but to save on performance, and it looks just as good, in my opinion, as 60 hertz. Now, obviously, when you compare it 40 hertz to 80 hertz that we get on the OLED, it's just night and day difference. It's so much better on the OLED, and you're getting the same performance. Literally, it's 40 FPS, but it just looks much smoother, and you're going to get the same graphic fidelity and a little bit better battery life because of the internals of the OLED. So that was just a quick little demo of some differences in gameplay versus the two Steam Decks together. I also will put it side by side here so you can get as good a shot as you can to kind of depict on which screen looks a little bit better. Again, it's really difficult to get this on camera because in person it looks completely different than it does on camera. I can tell you that right now. But yeah, the OLED display is clearly the better choice. It's just cleaner, clearer, the colors pop a lot more, and it's much smoother at that 90 hertz refresh rate. Now the question is that worth an upgrade to sell your old Steam Deck and upgrade another $400 or $500 to get the OLED version? I can't really say that for certain quite yet because I just got it out of the box. I just set it up. I haven't done my full testing on it, but I will get you that answer in my next video, which will be the original LCD Steam Deck versus the OLED to go head to head, game to game, essentially get you the best differences in performance and give you my personal opinions on which one I prefer using and which one I think is the better buy. But if I was to give you guys a first-hand experience review just straight out of the box, the OLED is amazing. It does have a leg up over the LCD in the sense of the software. I mean, when this guy first came out of the box, I remember the software was pretty glitchy. It had its issues, but Steam and Valve have just been amazing at their updates and getting fixes and bugs ironed out over the years of the Steam Deck being alive, and I can't applaud them enough for literally having the best software on the market for handheld gaming devices like these. It throws the Legion Go out of the water, same with the ROG Ally. Any Windows device just cannot match up to the software of the Steam Deck. Clearly there is some issues though running Linux on a device like this when you're trying to play Windows-based video games. There is going to be some glitches here and there in certain games that just will not launch on a Linux-based device. So before you purchase this, you got to look at and see which games will actually run on the Steam Deck, because you might run into a situation where the only games you play, maybe they're only a Windows optimized game and you won't be able to actually launch it on the Steam Deck. And I did run into that myself a couple times in the past when I first got mine, and that's why I like having a Windows-based device as well, like the Legion Go. I will also do a full comparison video between those devices in the future as well. And one little last thing I wanted to add, off camera, when I was setting these up, my wife came in and tested both of these, and she did say there is a massive difference in weight compared to the OLED to the original. The original, to her, felt almost twice as heavy. So take that with a grain of salt. It's going to depend on who you are and who's using the devices. And of course, if you've owned the original Steam Deck, if you haven't and you just pick up the OLED, you're never going to know the difference. But for me personally, when I pick them up, I don't see much of a difference. There is one. I do notice that this is lighter, but just not by much. But according to my wife, it is a pretty significant difference. So depending on the user, the usage may vary. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this first impressions video. I hope I got everything out of the way that you may have had questions about on like what is the main differences between these devices. If I was to give you a quick little rundown, it's a little bit lighter, better battery life, a little bit more efficient processor, so it again helps in the battery life, and a little bit less thermals. Apparently the fans are a little bit quieter as well, and to be completely honest with you, I've not heard them kick on at all yet, even with running Wreckfest. So that already is an A+, because these fans are pretty loud to begin with, so it's good to see that they worked on that. Supposedly the speakers are a little bit better. We'll get more into that in my next video. The buttons feel a little bit different as well. They are a different little bit of a shade of gray. You can see they're a darker gray compared to the brighter white. To be honest, I do like the white aesthetic of the original a little bit more, but I do like that the analogs aren't that gray background anymore. They do have a black background, which is kind of cool. I like that stealth look to it. They also did update and fix the buttons here. The Steam buttons just feel a lot better to click. They have more of a tactile response. Absolutely love it. The trackpads are also updated. They just feel a lot better. And don't get me wrong, like the trackpads in the original felt amazing for typing and just for using it on the desktop mode, but these are even better, which is just insane to say. Sadly, the analogs, though, did not get an upgrade other than just the outer shell here. It's a little bit more concave, so it hugs your finger a little bit better. And they do have a little bit of a different look as well, which again, I like the update to them, but sadly they still did not implement Hall effect analogs like a lot of people were expecting to. I know they will in a Steam Deck 2 update. Again, this is more of a Steam Deck 1.5. It's not necessarily a massive upgrade, but there is still a lot here that is an upgrade from the original, and I don't want to give you a yes or no yet on if you should upgrade, but from my experience so far, I'm very much loving the OLED, and I think it's going to be an amazing handheld for everybody who's looking to get a handheld portable PC, especially made by Valve. Their software improvements are just next level, and the display is absolutely gorgeous. I'd be really curious to put it up against the Legion Go to see the difference in quality there, but that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I got everything out of the way that you may have had questions about. If there isn't something that I mentioned in this video or didn't show in this video, I promise I will get to it in my next one. But in the meantime, leave a comment in the comment section below if you have a question on anything, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Also, make sure to leave a like, share, support as always, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and we'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out, everybody.